What's up? It's Friday night, Friday night lights, Friday night bioactive, all of the things that we've kind of said over the years. We don't even really know what to call this show. It's been bioactive Q&A. The reality is that we're kind of finding our way through this as we go, finding out new things. You know, a lot of us come from a cannabis background, learning more about this little guy right here, a bearded dragon, bioactives. How do we set that up? And so, prepping for this talk this weekend or this evening, especially for Memorial Day, I want to, I guess, double checked everything. Wanted to make sure Kevin learning about bearded dragons, and a lot of them say like, oh, they can't be in sand; they're gonna choke. They can't have leaves and stuff in the soil mix because they bite down on the soil. They're gonna choke. All of the things that it's kind of like in the early days of cannabis. A lot of the things that I see on the internet, I'm personally doing the opposite, and I'm finding success. And so I wanted to kick it over to my co-host Kevin here. We're obviously going to get into the nitty gritty of a bearded dragon, what it really takes to build a bioactive setup. In our opinion, I think this is where a lot of the money is going, if I'm truly being honest with you guys. A lot of people, it seems like, especially in the Midwest and that kind of thing, they love reptiles, snakes, these kind of things. And because where they live, they have a little more extra income than some of us that live in certain states where it's a lot just to get by. And so that's what we're starting to see is that people love obviously the reptiles the same way they love their cats and dogs. And so the bioactive system is starting to make sense for people that are into breeding and taking care of these things on a whole nother level, especially snakes. No one's ever really talked about bioactive for snakes. I think it almost sounds too good to be true for a lot of those like type OGs and stuff. So we're gonna break all of those things down. But today we're gonna talk about bearded dragons. So I'm gonna throw it over to Kevin, then we'll get into it.
All right, what's up, everybody? Thank you, Brian. The reason we're doing this bearded dragon talk is because about what 5 days ago now, not very long ago, my son came home at about midnight with a bearded dragon and a tank and everything, and they had bought they had bought it for a girl, and she decided she didn't like it, and so he was over there. It was his friend's little sister, and so they're like, "You want it?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I got lots of little brothers; they'll love it." And so we have Brian is the lead on it, but we've discussed it a lot of the idea of using like an IMO3 or an active soil, a living soil, whatever you might want to call it, using that in those tanks of a reptile. Certain reptiles, I don't know if all of them work, but with the bearded dragon, um, it seems it just simply makes sense that if you've got microbes in a soil and it's active and living, anytime there's a little bit of poo-poo that goes down on it, they're going to chomp down on it quickly. Hopefully that's the idea, and because that's how Mother Nature works. So, got a bearded dragon just by chance, and I was like, dude, this is going to be awesome because Brian's the guy that knows about all this stuff. And another thing is, he raises the isopods, and bearded dragons. One thing they can't eat is an isopod, a roly poly. Now that we're going to get into that, Brian, pretty soon. I'm going to ask you some questions on that, and because I went out and gathered some just those grays, as you call them, gray roly polies, around our pool. Just pulled them up. We got about 50, 100, who knows how many. But we dumped about 20 of them in there, and he's chomped on them a couple times. So the roly polies, I know, Brian, you raised them for a few reasons. I'd assume as food for reptiles, but then also as part of a living soil system, something like that. Is that two main reasons you raise them?
Yeah, so the best thing about certain isopods is that they can actually provide three different things for you. So one is they're actually going to be a food source. Two, when the animal defecates, even the man K, basically a fancy word for baby isopods, they're pre-programmed, if you will, to eat poop. So they're perfect to build and be a bioactive cleanup because they're already, especially when they're little, to be programmed to eat the defecation from this animal. They also love to eat the shedding. There's chitin and there's protein. One of the other biggest issues when using like and feeding bearded dragons is there's crickets and there's dubia roaches. And for as far as I can see, I've only been in this for almost 3 years. Still pretty new to it, to be honest, even at that 3 years. most people have always used crickets or have always used dubias. And the problem, at least in my family, is that crickets stink no matter what's going on. A healthy cricket stinks. A dead cricket stinks. A colony that's starting to collapse, those ultimately stink. It never smells good to use crickets. You're going to spend a lot of money on them. By the time you get them home, a lot of them are going to be dead. And then you have dubia roaches, which are roaches. And not everybody wants to have roaches in their house. They do get out of the tanks. A lot of them seems like they can climb up the glue or sometimes even the glass for this. So from a bearded dragon standpoint, most people, including a lot of the owners of reptile stores and stuff, they to this day still use paper towels or putt grass. And then after the animal defecates and pees, usually several times, which is disgusting, they walk through it and all that kind of stuff, then they'll change that out. And since that's been the industry standard, I'm starting to see opportunity for people that understand soil systems, bioactive systems, and then, of course, with Kevin, taking it to the next level with the IMOs. And so if you're able to build a soil system and then potentially build your own IMO, or know the plugs to get the IMO to improve these reptile enclosures, you're going to be on the next level, and it's going to be a lot easier to take care of the animal.
Very good. So I got the bearded dragon. Like I said, I learned from Bryan. He eats isopods and all the other things you just said, crickets, the roaches. But Bryan knows so much about this, and it's very awesome that I just got the dragon. It was awesome. My son just got it because now I'm really going to be able to do what he's been talking about. We ought to teach some other people. So this will be me experimenting with my own stuff, right here, first person. So tonight I wanted to talk to Bryan about a bearded dragon because maybe some of you have them also, or somebody that has one. This show will be for them. And you guys can learn a lot about what is happening in what Bryan is trying to make happen really in the reptilian world is combining some of what we know from cannabis with building soils and making living soils and microbiology and combining that into the reptile world where the goal is, like Bryan said, people have to change it out. He meant the bottom part, the paper towels, the whatever they got down there, they have to, that means you got to take everything out, pull it out, clean it, stuff back in, more stuff back in. I'm sure it takes a long time. And if you don't have to do that, that's just a heavy burden that's removed from wanting to have reptiles. So that leads to the first question, Bryan. What's the goal of keeping a reptile? Like people like me, I don't have snakes. I don't want a snake. Snakes are, there's that natural ancient fear of the slithering animal, right?
I don't like snakes either, bro. I'm actually afraid of snakes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, but why do people want to keep reptiles? I know you've said things like Kohler before and all that. Keep when they're healthy, they look different than when they're unhealthy. Go ahead, talk on that.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to be able to tell about an animal is I think their environment. And so, like we had mentioned, when there's just putt grass or there's paper towels, there's usually not leaves in there or anything. So it's basically like a fish tank with maybe a rock, a stick. So the animal's not even like the mind seems to kind of wander almost. And at first you're like, yeah, all right, whatever. But if you hang around a bearded dragon long enough, you'll start to see that they're actually, I give this little guy way more credit than when I first got him. They're extremely intelligent in the fact that they seem to recognize, like I feed him with adding the isopods. The isopods also build up enough to where I could just move the soil a little bit, and the isopods start to scatter, and so he's allowed to hunt. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people want is they want to have an animal that they can take care of. And so they see these things at the reptile shows. It's the person wants to sell a bearded dragon, so they make it sound pretty easy to take care of. And when they get home, they think that putting them in the tank and kind of just checking on them every few days is going to make the animal happy. The reality is that's not how it works, man. And they're actually a lot of work if you choose to go that way. It smells to high heaven. It's just disgusting, to be honest. And so to be able to take this to the next level, we want to have a soil system that is continuing to improve week after week, month after month. The same way that the cannabis farmers have kind of proved that to the old school hydro farmers back in the day, that you can reuse your soil system. And so reusing your soil system in the reptile world, that also sounds like blasphemy. They don't believe a lot of the stuff that I'm saying unless they kind of come to the talk or something. It sounds too good to be true. And so the reality is that there's opportunity because we're using Mother Nature. None of us on what we're going to talk about in these next series, or probably for the rest of our life here, invented any of this stuff. We're just learning from each other and then finding ways to improve on Mother Nature. And so now that this little community is starting to get into the reptile space, I want the reptile people, because I'm sure more of them are going to watch this video, Kevin, see that we're coming from a place where a lot of us have kind of understood this on a whole nother level for a few years now. So to be able to take plants on another level, that's very hard to do. But to take care of a bearded dragon with a soil system, it's very easy to achieve. And so I've had my bearded dragon for 2.5 years. His little tank here is next to me. When my wife's not taking care of our newborn, I would love to do like a Q&A and also like show it in real time and all of that. But I've never had to clean the tank. I don't have to replace the isopods. I just choose to if I want to add diversity and see what happens. But the dairy cow specifically, that's called a Porcellio laevis, the scientific name, but everybody knows it as the dairy cow. That one is so prolific that you can use it as a feeder. You can put them in there. They're going to run and they're going to breed prolific enough. And if you put some springtails in there as well, the springtails start to break down the defecation and the shedding a little bit quicker than the isopods do. And so it goes springtails, then it goes mankay, and then it goes, the larger isopods. The larger dairy cow isopods love protein. And so basically what you could do is you can kind of like prep these isopods, feed them a healthy food system with a lot of protein and calcium, prep them in this way, bee pollen. And so then when the bearded dragon eats these isopods, it's a complete food system. So I make sure, Kevin, that he's just eating the isopods that I have, playing around with that kind of stuff. And then I'm using chia seeds, cover crop. He's going to destroy that, but he also eats it. And then grasses are the only thing that I've found where he'll tear it up, but it seems like it'll come back for the most part. The grasses are what you want to try to get to become sustainable, because as they start to grow out, you could chop and drop those, and now you're feeding that whole system. So in reality, I'm doing the same stuff that a lot of us cannabis guys have been talking about for a pretty good, at least 10 years now, a lot of us. And some of us in the early days is closer to 15 years. So bring all that knowledge to the reptile space. I think we're going to have, we're going to make an impact, Kevin. And I want to throw it over to you for that, because people want to have reptiles because it brings them joy. The only issue is that you obviously can't most people won't take their bearded dragon out for a walk, right? Because it kind of looks weird or whatever. So how do we take care of them? Well, we let them kind of play up here, and then we make sure that their environment is constantly clean and constantly improving so that they want to be in there.
Wow. Very good. So I asked the question of the goal of keeping a reptile, and you were saying, what I got was people like to take care of things. They like to have an animal or a pet, and then for joy, because it brings people joy to know they are. I mean, when you take care of things, it does bring you joy. But that's a good explanation. Also, when you were talking about the IMO 3, I wrote down everything you're talking about. Like, instead of having to change it out, not having to change it out with changing it out, whatever. The IMO 3 is going to continuously improve. It's going to save you time. It's organic. It is part of the food system that's going to feed the dragon. So there's lots of good things. Besides that, it's just like you said, it improves, meaning that the IMO is going to continually eat the poop, eat the flesh. I don't know, whatever's organic that falls down there. Given enough time, something is going to chow down. I was looking at my bearded dragon tank. About 5 days ago, I put probably 6 inches of IMO 3. It's down to about 4 inches. It's packed itself in a bit. And but on the glass on the side, I can see red wigglers. I can see a centipede in there. I see a roly-poly that's stuck. I thought roly-poly could move through dirt, but they can't. He's stuck, man. He's been there for days. I see fungi growing in the open spots. There's humidity on the glass, so it's active. It's going. Everything's working well. Like you said, the roly-polies are scratching the top, and he has yet to go digging. But, he stands there, and when he turns that head sideways, he's like, boom, nailed you. He saw it move, and then he'll jump down on it. But before we go there, let me ask a few more questions. Is it common in the reptile world for reptiles to get diseases?
Now, I have heard that it does seem like that's more common with snakes or like high-end reptiles like water monitors and things that I don't even probably really even understand yet. Personally kind of stay away from the snakes, so all I know is that when something is high-end in the reptile space, the person selling it makes the people wash their hands before they get anywhere near it. And so I would imagine in that space, it does seem like there's diseases that could potentially happen. And so they're very proactive in preventing that. On my side of things, bearded dragons, geckos, all of the little things that seem to eat isopods, it seems to me as long as it's healthy, you can tell a healthy bioactive system, of course, especially if you have worms in there. The bearded dragon's going to want to eat that the composting worms as well, like when you kind of move the soil a little bit. So everything in there, for the most part, is being eaten or being composted down. And so that's why I think a lot of people are kind of going in this direction, is because once they understand this aspect, they realize that this is something that I can almost like set it up and then just check on. And what, I'm sorry, what did you lead the question with? I don't want to get too far away from. Oh, you're muted. You're
Sorry.
muted. Oh,
Do
yeah.
reptiles get diseases?
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to double check. So as long as there's a healthy system, and I think as long as they're not walking back and forth over their pee and their manure, just like in anything in life, a bearded dragon defecates on one side too. So they're more intelligent than we give them credit for. So as long as we keep their environment healthy and we make sure that we're feeding them those isopods, in my opinion, that's how he like maintains the color and everything. Um, is because of that. And I haven't seen any disease from the smaller animals. Um, and I would imagine if more of the snake breeders actually kind of bought into a living soil system and understood it a little bit better, I think that they would actually see that come down. And that's why I was saying, man, this could be a pioneer type thing, something where whoever wants to get on this boat with me, there's a lot of issues, a lot of money that's lost. All the early stuff that you heard with cannabis is some of the same complexities with breeding and traveling with all of these animals, is that they do get sick. They do could potentially pass a lot of diseases. There's mites and things that go back, grain mites and snakes especially. But because I use Mark stuff with the rogue beetles, the predatory mites, and all of that, I've personally never had that. And I would imagine that more people would find success kind of understanding what we're talking about,
Yeah, it seemed it would be with snakes, more of a disease kind of a thing. That's what when I've since I got that little thing, since I've got the bearded dragon, I've been reading a ton of stuff and just learning about it. That's where I'm getting all these questions for you. Now, let's get into more of the specific of bearded dragon proper questions about him specifically, him or her. The first one is, could I put another bearded dragon in this tank? Could I put anything else in this tank? Another reptile, not like a large one, but comparable size, another little lizard. Will they fight each other? Will they freak out?
The only time I've seen that work is when they're like almost brand new, like little itty bitty babies. You could put like 10 of them in a decent sized container. Um, I guess if you're not as reputable as a human being to your animals, there are some people that put more in that, but they need their space. And so the rule of thumb, from what I understand, especially if you have a male, is that he can only hang out with himself unless you're trying to mate him, because they will fight to the deaths, apparently. I've personally never seen that. This little dude just hangs out in basically a penthouse because my wife was able to find this huge thing that they were giving away for free. So I just ran over there and picked up the huge fish tank kind of thing. Um, I would also say that they make up all this stuff that you need to spend all this money on these lights and things, and I do believe that you need a heat lamp, especially in the winter. But I have this fancy fish tank pushed against the window on the east side of my house, so that the sunrise comes up every morning, and I'll see him, and he'll be kind of like sitting proud like this. And from what I understand, when they open their mouth and they're just sitting there like that, that is pure heaven for them, because they're able to regulate their temperature. And so that's what they would be doing in nature. They'd be sitting on some kind of rock, just opening their mouth and letting the winds and kind of cooling off on their own. But when they're in that kind of trance or state, you'll see it, man. They kind of just like probably when we're stoned. I just feel a little bit better than you did 10 minutes ago. That's the kind of euphoria that he's in, and so I think he needs all of that space just to feel good. Maybe in the same way, if you think about like, if you get cornered as a grown man or something happens, you immediately want to fight out because you don't want to have your back to that. And I've also learned that as well, that you kind of want to cover up at least one of the sides to make them feel a little bit safer. So having them be by themselves, in my opinion, is just good. I think they call it husbandry of the reptile. A basking
So,
light, yeah. But you don't
back,
need all those super fancy lights. I think if you put it next to the window, the sunlight gets him. I mean, this dude, from what I understand, when I take him to shows and everything, his color and his spikes and everything are extremely sharp. And people have asked me how I have achieved that, and I told them I feed him isopods. It's called gut loading. I forgot that earlier. So I gut load the isopods for what the beardy will need.
very good. So, what temperatures do dragons like then? Like, if that, like that, I have the heat lamp, but it's not like a hot one at all. It's not. There's not a lot of heat at all coming off of it. It's what came with the tank, and but it's about, I don't know, 6 inches from him when he's on the top. There's a log that goes up, and he loves to lay on it right now because it's kind of close to the lamp, I guess. But what temperature is it specifically? I'm assuming like 90 degrees. I mean, I'm thinking if it's their environment, a reptile, cold-blooded, they need heat constantly, and I'm sure 90, 95 degrees ought to be getting close.
Yeah, I've noticed that they do need the heat, but at the same time, they like to kind of self-regulate. And so you offer the lamp to him, but if I notice he's on top of the cage and not even by the light, I run over there and turn the light off. I'm not paying for that, right? And so I kind of just monitor it because he's in my office. I get to monitor him throughout most of the day. And I would say that he likes being in I would almost consider like the wetter side, the colder side, the bioactive side, just as much as he likes being on the sand hot side. And so, in my opinion, that might be because he also knows that that's where all the food is, because the isopods really only stay on the bioactive side. They migrate to the sand and then they come back. And so I would say that giving him the option to go back and forth, or her the option to go back and forth, is the key to a successful bearded dragon, because you're just basically letting them choose their environment, choose when they want to hunt, eat. And you can supplement some of this with certain leaves and stuff like that. My favorite is Brussels sprouts. For whatever reason, man, they love to eat the Brussels sprouts. You do have to be careful though with leafy greens. There are some, I don't want to misrepresent this, so please do your own homework, but I believe it's like spinach and maybe some other ones that you would think that they can eat. That is deadly. So you want to double check that. But I feed
Yeah.
him Brussels sprouts and basically isopods, and I was, he's not dead. But if he
So,
got into a bunch of spinach, they could potentially kill themselves. Yeah.
no spinach. I'm taking notes. That's what I'm doing as I'm looking to the side here. So that is exactly the next questions. What do dragons eat? Now, I know you are. Let's go over what you have said already. They like you feed Brussels sprouts to him. You said do not feed any type of spinach to him. So anything in the spinach type family, though, do you think it would be like anything along in those type of like a mustard type of leaf? I don't even know if spinach is in mustard or mustard is in spinach families, but it's those kind of leaves. Is there anything specific about one of those leaves, or you just know that it's one of them is spinach?
I just know that when I got it, the gentleman told me just make sure you don't feed them that. There are other foods and leaves out there, leaves something like a kale might even be something dangerous. So just double check that because I'm not 100% sure on
Yeah.
it. But to minimize all of that, I only feed him Brussels sprouts and then I experiment with the isopods. And because of that, I think he's super healthy. I guess you could also give like we give him blueberries, chop
There
those
you
up a
go.
little bit,
There you go.
strawberries,
Now you're talking.
that's
See, he was
fine as
holding back the
well.
gold bars on us. He was holding back on us. Blueberries, strawberries. What else?
Yeah, a little bit of bananas every now and then, but I keep
Man,
his diet pretty basic because I don't want to mess that up, man. And I got too much. Clearly, we got two. You have more kids than I do, so I don't have time to double think like, okay, what did I feed the bearded dragon? It's just boom, give them some Brussels sprouts. I have the oyster shell. Uh, I actually use that as a cover for some of the food, and then the isopods can kind of hide in there, and then you can go in there, Kevin, if you want to use your own. Here, let me show that.
So I was reading on a website. It's called Reptilinks, and it's got all kinds of questions. And he was talking about the foods there, and he was talking about added grapes and apples. They're able to eat those also. Go ahead with the oyster shell. We're talking about isopods under it. You can put that down on the ground. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so it's twofold, right? It's a house for them, but at the same time, I don't know if you guys can see it as well, but they chip away at it. The isopods kind of pick at it. It takes a long time. The springtails break down the calcium as well. And so when I pull this up and then I put a little water down in the morning, the isopods run throughout the cage like crazy. And then our bearded dragon's named Little Man. So Little Man gets to run around and hunt for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And in my opinion, that's why my bearded dragon has never bit me, has never really bucked up at me. If they get a really dark, almost like beard, in a way, it kind of looks like almost like a lion. You know, it's pronounced when they when they're pissed off. He's only done that like one or two times when he's fallen out of the cage when he was younger. So I think because I give him that environment, I'm consistent with feeding him, I'm petting him. That's another thing. If you can learn to pet him down the back of his head and he closes his eyes, that means he trusts you. So it's the same thing when I was learning with Marco about the bunnies. Like if you walk up to bunnies and they don't immediately jump up, like they're laying down just chilling, that means that they trust you. I think that goes a long way too, man, with these beardies because to me, it's almost like a upper echelon of the only way I could describe it is like a praying mantis. Where you think of praying mantis, or at least when you first get them, you don't think that they're highly intelligent. And then when you're around them enough, you're like, damn, this little thing is crazy smart. Same thing with a bearded dragon, just on another level.
I got a garden bunny that trusts me. I just posted it on Instagram, man. We can get 2 feet away. He'll just sit there and kind of chew. If I move quick, he'll jump. But if I just walk slow, he's cool. But so I was petting him today. Mine's little,
Mm-hmm.
not that big, right? He's not, but maybe 5 inches or so. So his tail's the longest thing. But he's got some pretty color to him. He's got nice, pretty markings. He's got, like, I know what you're talking about. There's little thingies kind of coming off, and you can see the design is there, but he's still little.
Let me see if I can. He's got pretty good claws.
How old is little man?
He's about 2.5. But all right, so see these spikes right? Well, damn,
Yeah.
we don't have the best cameras for all this, but there are these white spikes all on the side of them, right?
Lift it up some.
And they're extremely sharp.
Oh,
And I've had people tell me, like right here and stuff,
yeah, I see it.
that they've asked me how am I achieving that, and I believe from my research it's the chitin and it's the calcium and different sources of the calcium so that he has enough nutrients to break that down. And then again, I think hunting allows his little brain to just enjoy the day a little bit better. So
How are
all
you
of these things,
how are you feeding him the chitin and the calcium again?
I'm gut loading the isopods.
Oh, you're
So
through the
so
isos. Okay.
So I learned that from a guy that breeds crickets. If you gut load crickets, you can actually sell them for a premium price. So I gut load everything on. I just normally do that anyway, and then I don't charge like a premium for that. I just feel like my customers see the difference in the quality and the color of the isopods, and that comes from gut loading them and learning about that kind of stuff. But you'll see he's pretty laid back. And so
Yeah,
I
he's
also
chill.
think just like a dog, man, like have you ever met somebody where like their dog just constantly nipping at somebody, jumping up, they don't listen to the owner whatsoever? In my opinion, that's because the owner's household when they get home is in total chaos and disarray, right? Especially if you've had that dog since a puppy. So you can sometimes have that the same way with the bearded dragons I've heard. So if you're constantly like your household's crazy and stuff, then this little guy's gonna feel all that energy and be crazy. Well, I'm a pretty laid back guy. You guys know that I enjoy smoking cannabis, just kind of laying back and stuff. So he's pretty chill as well. And I think that goes a long way, man, when you want to kind of take care of this animal is make sure that the crazy kids in your household maybe don't hold him as long until he gets a little bit bigger because you want him to have that calm demeanor because when they do bite, I've heard that it can be pretty painful.
Really. So my next question is still about on what he eats. Um, I gave him, some of those roly poly on his scale, on my little bearded dragon scale. There's some roly polies they're not this big, but some roly polies that are big and some roly polies that are little. And he can hardly get the big ones in his mouth. The little bitty ones, he'll chomp on for a minute and then he'll spit it out. And then he might chomp on it again, roll around, spit it out. Is that common? Are these things too hard shelled? Is that something about isopods that you breed them for softer shells, edible, things like that? Can you speak about that?
Yeah, you basically answered your own question there. So
Okay.
the grays are Armadillium maculatum. They have a harder exoskeleton, and those actually aren't the ones that you would want to use as a feeder. You want to use the Porcellio laevis. And so Porcellio laevis comes in a variety of like colors, if you will. There's milkback Porcellio laevis. There's orange dairy cow Porcellio laevis. There's the dairy cow Porcellio laevis, which is the I guess the most famous one outside of the rubber ducky isopod. In my opinion, from doing this for 2 years, I just completed a 2-year project breeding the orange dairy cows because they're not as aggressive towards one another. So what some people have been hesitant on with a bioactive setup is if you have like thousands of dairy cows and you're not really managing the system, they love protein so much that if he starts to shed and he's not completely shed it off, there's been people that have claimed that those dairy cows will then kind of almost start to take over and could potentially eat your bearded dragon and hurt your bearded dragon. So I've talked to other people, people that run like animal hospitals and stuff, and what they said was kind of the same thing that I honestly believe is that they're decomposers. So they're actually not going to eat the animal or anything. They're just eating the skin that's coming off the animal. And if it's not shedding off correctly, that's why people have freaked out because you see all the isopods in one little area. To minimize that from a business standpoint, that's why I think the orange dairy cow is the future for feeding bearded dragons and geckos and some of these smaller little dart frogs, that kind of thing, is because they're not aggressive towards one another. I don't see them eating each other the same way that the basic dairy cows do. And they're prolific, but they're not so prolific that it's a problem.
So that's one of the Porcellio laevis. Is that what you're calling them?
Porcellio laevis. Yep.
Laevis, Porcellio laevis. Okay, and the orange, that's what you're saying is the one. So I'm assuming you're feeding them some type of milled up calcium, some shell or something like that. That's where you're trying to get the chitin and the calcium. So go back to that. What are you feeding the isopods to? Front load, belly load,
Gut load.
gut load.
Yep. So when my wife and I first got into the isopods, one of the hardest things, especially at the beginning, was to get them to breed. There's all this information online. It's saying like to use fish flakes, real basic things. There's even an isopod food called morning wood. I mean, almost the most ridiculous name I would think for a company, right? But it's literally called morning wood. There's bug burger. There's all these things that are fancy names and stuff. But because my wife has a gluten intolerant, that has taught me to read labels probably more than I guess I ever would have thought to. And so I read the labels on all of this stuff, and it's tons of filler. It's tons of the yellow 5 and the 6 and all whatever all that stuff is. And
Put
so
dye
that
in that. Golly.
yeah, and it has all an extra filler to like plump it up and all of this. So I thought to myself, this is extremely expensive, by the way. Why can't we just kind of figure out our own thing? And so my wife took about 6 months and started playing around with a variety of different ingredients, and we created an isopod and springtail mix. The real secret sauce behind it is that we're using diversity within it. So obviously I'm not going to give away the everything in it, but there's different calcium sources in there. There's specific greens, specific chitin things that are in there. And if you guys watch enough of our shows over the years, I mean, you kind of know what's already in a lot of that stuff. So you could probably get pretty close to what my wife created. And from there, you can go on my website and see people love it. There's other companies that are using it. And I think the secret is because we're using real food ingredients. There is no filler. So just like in Mother Nature, if you're able to find like a high-end protein source, that's rare. So in the isopod world, when you're able to find the extra chitin and the extra proteins, and there's actually like even pea proteins in there and that kind of stuff, spirulina, however you say that fucking word.
Spirulina.
Spirulina. Yeah. That's in there as well, right? So you have all of this diversity, and I think from that, it's such a rich thing that the isopods just need to take a little bit. And so just a dash, like our little container should last you at least 6 months. That's what we tell our customers. And so
Okay.
that goes a lot further. So my opinion is the food sources matter. Even when you're like feeding rove beetles and stuff, and you would think that it doesn't, in my opinion, it really does. That's why I went from the cricket frass to the black soldier fly frass, because I saw an uptick in the color and the overall like the vibrancy of a little colony moving around. They just seemed happier, healthier. And so since then, I mean, I'm pretty much doing that same playbook.
So when I get some of these ISOs, it will come with some food also then. Is that what you're saying? When I go to rubberduckyisopods.com, I order some isopods, those oranges or the dairy cows possibly. It comes with food. Is that correct?
If you get the kit, it comes with food, or we just charge a modest fee for the container. And like I said, that's going to last you 6 months. Or you can make it yourself. I mean, it's that's what I mean. Like you can play around. There's different calciums out there: coral calcium, oyster shell flour, calcium carbonates. Just trying to get diversity. Everything that you've heard building a soil system is kind of the same thing with the reptile game. The more diversity that you have, the more success it seems to me that you're going to have trying to get these things to breed and stay healthy and minimize health concerns.
Yeah, I think another thing is, Bryan, you can't figure out everything on your own, and that's when you go to people like you that you can trust. Because why, my point of view is, why am I going to spend 2 years figuring out my own calcium blend when you've already done it and I can just go get it from you, right? So there's certain things that you can just be like, because again, I'm going to cannabis, I'm raising 5 kids, businesses, I do all kinds of things. I do want the bearded dragon to live. Right. So I'm not going to be using 2 years of my time trying to figure out what I need to feed my ISO so that I can belly load them and get it into my dragon. Right. There's going to be easier ways to do it. So that's why Bryan is so special to us and rubberduckyisopods.com, is because he makes that easy for them, the reptile world. Like I try to make it easy for the cannabis guys and the gardeners and the natural farmers, just trying to say, look, here's some things I make that are really good that you might not be able to make. So use those and have success with them. Well, that'll be cool then when I get some isopods to learn to.
Well, you sent me stuff, buddy. I'm obviously gonna hook you up, but I want the community, especially the ones that want to rock with us on a Friday, to know that I think there's some groundbreaking stuff here. And if you're on the East Coast, if you're in kind of like the northern Midwest, as far as I see, there's really nobody there that's doing this yet. So it would depend on your state. I would imagine there's somebody that's trying to do this, but you might be able to find a way to at least go to the shows and make a little money. Right now, I have a show at least once a month in Colorado. And so if you do enough research and stuff, I think you could pick and choose and find these things. And if you talk to Bearded Dragon people and told them that they don't have to pick up after the defecation, their ears perk up.
That's the thing, huh? Cleaning the stink, messing with the yucky part. They want to not have to do that. It makes total sense that your ears would perk up. It'd be like having a dog that's inside your house and being like, listen, you don't ever have to clean up after this thing anymore, right? Yeah, that'd be the idea, right. Kind of like that. So let's continue on with the bearded dragon. A few more specific questions. And guys, I encourage you to ask questions also. We might do a little giveaway again. Best question, whatever whatever Bryan thinks was the best question. I'll send some of my new genetics, some of the FIMs that I've been doing. So we'll do that. Ask your questions. I've already got the questions that have been asked in the comments marked, and we're going to go to them here in a few minutes. So we'll ask everybody's questions, and Bryan will be able to answer everything. Shout out to Mark also, MI Beneficials. He can't be here tonight, but we still miss you, brother. Appreciate everything you do. He's got the springtails that will also go into that whole system, living soil system in a reptile cage. He's got all kinds of stuff. He's got
designer springtails, which most people don't have. So he's got red ones, yellow ones, blue ones. spiky looking ones. I mean, if you really want to kind of nerd out with this stuff, Mark is the guy to reach out to for the springtails. Oh, I appreciate that, man.
So,
That'd be funny.
my next question? What's the typical color of a bearded dragon? Is there a typical color? From what I'm looking at in the camera at yours, it has a reddish, orangish, yellowish tint to it. Is that common? Is there different colors?
So this guy could have maybe been hyping me up, but he wanted to trade orange red bearded dragon for in the early days my red tiger isopods. And so he claimed that, the gray looking ones and that kind of stuff, those are very basic in nature. The orange and yellows and those kind of exotic colors, those are very rare. So supposedly this little guy was worth about 300 bucks. I have seen them as high as $1,500, but those things look so exotic that I just don't know enough about them. But there are, I mean, there's chameleons that I've seen for like $10,000 and stuff. Panther chameleon, I think it was called. I just don't know enough about them to even get to that level. The reality is that most people just have a little bearded dragon because of like how Kevin had just mentioned. Their kid wanted it, or my kids wanted it, and then we made a trade, so we didn't even have to spend money on it. And then once they get home and they realize that the defecation smells to high heaven, a lot of them actually want to give them back and that kind of thing. So to keep the overall health of just the community as a whole, I think bioactive stuff could really improve almost every animal within the reptile shows.
Wow. Can bearded dragons swim?
I don't know. Uh, I will say that they like to be in water at certain times. He does have a water bowl kind of thing, but he usually doesn't drink the water from it. He drinks the water off of the leaves from the grass. So he likes to kind of like chew on the grass and get the water that way. I also spray water in his face until he turns away. So I usually will do that like once or twice, and he seems to really like that.
Okay, that makes sense because a spray bottle came with this, and I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know what to do with the spray bottle. I
But
figured,
remember too, I'm in Colorado, so it's very dry. So you might only need to spray it once, and I got to do it like 2 or 3 times because it's extremely dry in Colorado. So from a humidity standpoint.
yeah. My bearded dragon was chasing a roly poly, and it went into the little drink he's got, which isn't but a half-inch deep. And my bearded dragon fell head first into there trying to get the roly poly, and he could barely get out. Like it took him, 5 to 7 seconds, but that's a long time looking at an animal with his head under the water, kind of struggling. I was like, oh my gosh, I almost had to take the top off and reach in.
Hmm.
But then I did read online and it said that they do not swim well. So don't give them a big deep water bowl because they could drown. They're not good swimmers. They don't like it. Make sure it's little bitty. But like you said, spraying the leaves. I put some microgreens in there. I showed that on Instagram, the video. I
I
showed
saw
that.
that this morning.
Yeah. So right now they're coming up. Little bitty clovers are coming up and things like that. So that'll be good just to, spray those leaves a little bit. See if he'll go there. I feel like he's just trying to figure out life and be like, what is this? Where am I at? Where's the food? He's like, I said he likes to lay on that log. It's straight up. He likes his head up often, like you're saying. He likes to kind of be vertical up onto something. and
Yeah, they definitely like to be up high. Like I said, they can be skittish if they feel like threatened, and that's why some people will use like almost like a wallpaper if they do get a fish tank to save money and not a reptile tank, and kind of just use one of the walls to make sure that he feels a little bit safer. Um, but again, man, I think it's all in your demeanor. You walk in, I could touch him and he doesn't like coil back at me and stuff. I've seen people that breed these little guys and they're constantly being bit, which makes me wonder, like behind the scenes, how do they really treat them? So I think anybody, again, that comes back to your earlier question, man. If a reptile, if anybody is in my household that I take care of, I try to make sure that they get the best life that I can provide for them within my means. And so that's why he gets the extra Brussels sprouts that are organic that cost $3 more than I just want to make sure that he's healthy. And I think that's truly what a lot of other reptile people believe. It's just if you're not into reptiles, it does seem a little weird at first that somebody would like love a snake the same way that you would love a dog. But I don't personally feel that way, but I've seen it, and I've seen it in their eyes, and when snakes have died and stuff, I've seen that
I
kind of
understand that.
pain.
Yeah, I can
Yeah, so
understand
that's what I
that.
mean. There's something to the reptiles, and not every human being has that bond. But if you could take care of them in a better sense, I think more people would listen to what we have to say, Kevin.
Yeah, man, that's why a lot of dads out on farms will tell their kids, don't be naming those animals.
Yeah.
Don't be giving no pet name to that thing because you're gonna hurt when we have to kill it. Or an animal kills it. So just call it cow. All right. So I got a question that's going to lead up into you telling us what would be best to get from your website, really, because I want to know what a good setup is. My question to you as a professional, right? I'm a amateur at this. I'm just learning. You're the guy that we need to talk to if we want to learn things about these bearded dragons, these setups. What is the ideal setup for a bearded dragon, and what isopods would you recommend to go into that setup? Like if like I've got my setup, right? You know what it looked like, but what would you say a good set? I'm not saying mine's good or bad. It doesn't matter. Just asking you, what would you be like if I had the perfect setup? This is what it would look like. I'd put these type of roly polies in there. Maybe mention what Mark's got, if you know that too. But that's kind of what I want to know. I want a good picture if you'll give us that.
Yeah, I'd say
And then we'll get into questions, guys. Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
sure. So I partnered up with Bart from Paonia Soil. If you guys are familiar with the cannabis stuff, there's a reason why I've chosen that. So that's my base. I'm using that. If you order the kit offline, or if you see me at shows, I even offer like a high-end kit with the super designer isopods. All of that is using Paonia soil, and I'm also using mushroom compost, and that's kind of like the main mix. Now I like to, but even before I set up his cage, I kind of set that mix up together, mix it up by hand, and then I throw some red wigglers in there to kind of just get that biofilm going. For whatever reason, man, I think there is something special to that stickiness that you find on the red wigglers that is called biofilm. It'll stick to the rove beetles will stick to it. The springtails will stick to it, and I think it's another way to kind of add diversity in a lot quicker and obviously in a lot easier manner. So once I kind of have that going where I know it's alive, then I do exactly what you were saying and I start to grow the cover crop. In my opinion, getting the exudates into that system quickly pays off long term because you don't have as big of an IPM issue. The easiest analogy to me would be if you had enough resources for everybody when you knew they were coming over, so nobody had to fight over everything. Everybody had and needed what they had right there in that small little environment. Then everything starts to take off. And so once the cover crop starts to grow, the chia seeds and the Dutch white clover, again, white clover, not red clover, because the red clover gets way too high. And then we're using grasses under the same system because we don't want to use a bunch of different diversity in cover crops because it'll get too high. Potentially the bearded dragon could get out of that. There are some plants to this day that some people are still on the fence of if it's safe or if it's not safe. So what I do, again, keep it simple, man. I'm just using the grasses. They love to chew on the grasses in the first place. You could chop and drop on the grasses. They love to tear into the soil anyway. So it's going to be pretty hard to grow pretty plants into these bioactive setups. And so when I see those online, I don't think they're realistic, to be honest. I mean, a bearded dragon is going to tear up almost everything. They have claws. They want to hunt and that kind of thing. From a isopod standpoint, again, in my opinion, diversity is key. So I would put in the dairy cows. I would put in the orange dairy cows. I would put in the milkbacks. They're going to reproduce at different levels, but they also have like the mankay, which are the babies. Then there'll be teens, and then they get to adults. The adult dairy cows get large enough that they actually will replace the dubia roaches. If you've ever had to price dubia roaches, those are extremely expensive. So people that are buying a bearded dragon and not going by my booth are spending a lot of money just to feed this little guy every single month because the industry standard is the crickets, which okay, it's a cricket, it's fairly cheap, but there's almost hardly any meat on the bones, right? And they all die and they stink. So you have to buy a ton of crickets. Usually that's a weekly thing. Or people will move on to the dubia roaches, but that's going to be, it allows you to be a monthly thing, but those are way more expensive than crickets. So the reason why my business is thriving is because we found ways to feed these with isopods and with the gut loading and all of the things that we had mentioned throughout this show. And so that is the focus, Kevin, that I think once you get that system going, then you can drizzle IMO, take a few leaves and kind of just running them over there. Same way I try to make it look like a wooded forest, but that's growing a little bit of a cover crop. And as basic as that sounds, that seems to be the key to success.
That just brings up a question in my head right now, like a reptile. What is I read that bearded dragons are originally from Australia. Am I right or wrong on that? Right?
Yep.
So that's going to be kind of dry, rugged, rocky, sandy type of land. I'm assuming that's basically what most of Australia is, pretty dry, I would assume. So doesn't it seem that we're creating it seems to me, let me say it that way, that we're creating an environment that's not really natural, possibly, when we put like chopped up woody bits and nuts and that IMO3 look that's in there and the roly-polies and the whatever else that might be in there. Whereas what I'm thinking in my own head is like their natural environment seems to be more rocky and dusty and dry. The reason, though, that we're doing a different environment is because we're not keeping it in its environment. That's the point. It's in our house. It's in a cage. It's in it's in something that's a totally different world for it. But we can create this environment through using this living soil that will work with these little reptiles, even though it's not their original environment, right? But it still works. I don't know. That's just kind of going through my head. That we're creating.
It definitely works because people will say like you can't use sand. Well, just make sure you use play sand because play sand does a clump, right? Like kid sand. So the play sand is on the left-hand side, but there's organic material and matter that's also in that sand. People claim that the bearded dragon would try to eat something in that sand and choke. Well, talking to breeders of bearded dragons, trying to find some better information than this is what a friend said happens. I found out that again these guys are highly intelligent. So what happens if they do kind of choke or something like that? They just open up their mouth and shake their head, and for the most part that comes out. So all of the nuances of, man, I think it has to be in this certain setup and you got to spend all this money. Another thing that a lot of people will kind of trick you on is you need a basking rock, meaning a heated rock. That is horrible for them. So you would think that, oh man, they must love to sit on a rock in outdoors under the sun. Yes, absolutely. But when you're trying to recreate that indoors, it's a terrible thing for them. They can actually burn their feet and all of these different things.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah, I think is it the best environment for the bearded dragon? Probably not. But compared to what everybody else is doing, this is head and shoulders above everything else. And so as long as you have the left side almost kind of like the Australian desert with sand and obviously the light, the heat lamp is on that side. And then you're growing a little bit of a cover crop. You have the food. They know to defecate on the side that is bioactive. For whatever reason, man, they know that keeps it clean. And so it makes me wonder the same way like when I first got into the bunnies. If I'm using a dwarf bunny, that bunny is stupid and defecates everywhere. But if I use a lionhead rabbit, they're intelligent and I can potty train them. And it seems like for this guy, I was able to potty train him and teach him that your food's over here, defecate in this little area. And then when you come back and a day later, all of that is gone. And so I think I don't really see anybody else doing that, Kevin. So you and I might be some of the first people that are actually going against the grain, but that's kind of how I've always lived my life.
Here we go. That's right. Here we go. Done it before. Last question, then we answer it. We're going to ask you guys' questions that are watching. Get your questions in. What's one thing that a new guy like me overlooks when he has a new bearded dragon?
I would think that again, I think of the hunting aspect of it because most people hand feed the crickets or the dubia. So they have these long tongs. I don't know if I have them. Anyway, they're like long. They almost look like chopsticks, but they're connected, and they're usually orange or red, and they're really long. And that's what they sell, and they tell you to pick up the cricket and then hand feed the bearded dragon. I don't think they like that. I think that's almost like a zoo aspect, you know, where you're like you throw the meat to the lion. Is the lion happy that it gets to eat? Yes, but did it get to hunt for that? No. So on a like a smaller scale, I think it's the same thing with this little guy. So the more that you can set up a system where when he moves that soil, everything runs around, maybe he digs a little bit deeper and he discovers that there's worms in there, you know, his brain remembers that. And so it's I would almost consider him more of like a miniature dinosaur than just like a dragon. They're he's highly intelligent. Sometimes he looks at me and it reminds me of like Jurassic Park when the raptors were like trying to open the doors and stuff because he knows how to climb up and he knows how to move his head and he can go up like this and kind of challenge me and telling me that he's dominant and stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot to that, man. And so the early mistakes that I would have had is not allowing him to like I don't have to hand feed him. He's smart enough; he'll figure it out. And as long as you have enough isopods in there, he'll be able to eat. And it's not like they got to eat every day either. You know.
So that was a question. Well, I've got so many questions I get to ask, but yeah, this it sounds like it's kind of like a kid, man. It's like the less you as a parent you learn, the less you can do for your kids, or the less you will do for your kids, the more they will have to do, and the more they will grow up, the more responsibility they'll have, a human they will be, a better life they will have. You know, it's just the whole same point. Like, let him try to learn how to live. He's going to be happier if he hunts and he gets something. You know, even the animal itself will feel better when he has those small successes and victories as a being itself, you know. So, well, Bryan, good answers to all my questions. I appreciate it. You've enlightened me. I feel like I'm at level 2 now. Thank you very much. I gotta.
Yeah, this is what these nights are for, man. Back and forth.
Level 2. All right, so it's time to get into the questions, and I'm going to need you to remember what question you like the best. As long as you're in the States, I'm going to send you some seeds. I sent some seeds out the other day. It's crazy, man. We're getting expensive on getting out there international, even just a small little package. But I want to keep it in the States this time. So first question. Let me get it up here. Go ahead.
Do you supplement calcium with the girls for egg-bound illnesses that they can get? Thanks. I supplement calcium in the diet. So yes, there's a variety of different calcium sources within that isopod food. And because we're gut loading the isopod, not only do they have all of those extra things that we've supplemented to them, but isopods also are a better food system when it comes to when you're breaking it down, like from proteins and fats and that kind of stuff. So you get the extra aspect of just the isopod in general as it's as a little crustacean, and then gut loading the isopod with specifics like calcium, like chitin, like going extra mile with high-end greens is how we've been able to have such success without really even knowing what the hell we're doing.
Good. So next question was, we were talking about spinach and do not feed them spinach. And a little conversation started to happen over here online. It says this, Owe1 Colnobi. Spinach, he says spinach is high in oxalates. And another guy asked right after that, wonder if it's high in oxalates and spinach, that's bad. Right. So do you know if that's what the deal is? Spinach?
I don't know personally. Like I said, the guy just kind of told me like, hey, this is the one no to make sure of. And I think the other ones aren't as toxic, but that one, and that would make sense, I think, because it's just too much of a specific thing. And if they know that, then I would imagine it is oxalates or something like that. Or maybe it's heavy metals that's potentially in some of the stuff.
Right. Here's a comment, Rick Easley. What's up, Rick? Pheno hunting isopods. Is that what you do, Bryan? Do you pheno hunt isopods? Give me your favorite pheno right now. Can you do that?
Yeah, I would say that I guess in a way, yeah, you do pheno hunt isopods and you buy them from other reputable people and you have to keep them, you know, you have to basically the easiest example for me would be the zebras, right? So the zebras have a nice white stripe. But you have to isolate the ones that have more of like the Morse code looking ones. So those are cheaper zebra. And so it's the same way with the high end ones. So the super high end ones that I like, one is called the white rubber ducky. People joke around that is the Chanel isopod. It's extremely expensive. I've had a year where they bred 5. I sell them in a 6 count, so I basically waited a whole year and I still couldn't even sell them. They take forever to breed. And anything that is cubaris would be considered a designer isopod. And I would also consider in that world that we are pheno hunting those designer isopods.
Now, this is going to be a level 1 question. Is a cubaris also a Porcelius laevius?
No, cubaris is usually found in like Thailand, Vietnam, and Porcelio laevis is usually found in more like Europe and North America.
Okay.
So the
All right.
isopods that I have are from all over the world. So there's very specific ones you can use. And to just be clear, the grays are fantastic for some, but there's a reason why that's not, it doesn't even have any monetary value where I am at because you can't use it as a feeder. And if there's too many of them, they actually will start to eat live plants.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, my little dragon, he can't eat the isopods. He's just the grays. I'm sorry, he can't eat the grays. He's chomping, and it falls out.
Mm.
Chomp, 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 and he never eats
It's
one.
too
I think.
much exoskeleton. You want the softness of the Porcelio laevis.
There you go, guys. There you go. Those the gold bar right there. Had no idea about any of that until we had these talks tonight. Okay, so we got another question here. I was reading it. I think I understand what you're saying. Is there a good specific fungi or bacteria that you would add as a spray to the pen? For example, would you spray labs, little diluted labs into the pen, as he called it, the tank, I believe?
So my experience with labs, especially in the early days, trying to make that stuff, going to the Chris Trump week-long thing, and I realized that that can almost be too much. It's almost like you set it in there and then it could potentially be too much. And so that's why I'm only using the IMOs that you guys produce. I think that keeps it really basic. I have noticed some fungal type things that take hold, but then they kind of go back down, almost like they balloon out. And then I don't know if he walks on it or whatever, but then it kind of just shrinks down again, gets mixed into the system when he's digging, and then everything kind of starts over. I would be cautious spraying the labs because the surface area it really isn't as big. I mean, it's the tank is uh, maybe 8 inches deep, but again, it's only on one side, and the whole side of the soil system it's very dry over here with the sand, but in the middle where there is still a lot of the bioactive, I don't heavily have a bunch of isopods right there. For whatever reason, the isopods stay on the direct opposite side of the heat lamp and they stay in the grasses and underneath that oyster shell. So I think having that separation um, kind of allows it where I don't need to go the extra mile with labs or with adding anything other than IMO.
Next question. Thai guy grows high.
Yeah, what up, man? Uh, we just been talking as well. Appreciate all your support, Ty Guy. I appreciate that over the years. Will basic grays have more vibrant colors in a living soil system, or is there more native species that are more rare? I would not use basic grays in a living soil system. Most people don't monitor them enough, and they breed so quickly that they will actually eat your plants. So in a living soil system, uh, it's really up to you. So you can use some like even the Porcelio laevis, like the orange ones, I think are kind of like the perfect hybrid for a lot of this stuff. Some people are using the zebras. Some people are using something called a pak chung, which is a cheaper rubber ducky isopod. It has a pink face. Um, so I think that's more for Instagram and that kind of stuff. So it depends. If you want a robust one, I can definitely steer you in that way off air and kind of provide you the nitty gritty on getting a little more detail from you. Um, or you can go the basically the industrial side, or like what we like to call the pretty girl route, where the cubaris are kind of like they're there. Do they break things down? Yes, but not at the same level. So it's really what your goals are going to be with this.
There you go. All right. Next question from Yellow Skunk Farms. This is the guy that Marco said to be paying attention to. So
Yeah.
I sent this guy a fat box of goodies today. I think it's going to
Nice.
get there Tuesday, Yellow Skunk Farms. Anyway, he's got a question. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Yellow Skunk Farms. What up, man? Again, it's somebody that always supports both of those shows. How deep should the bioactive mix be at the bottom of the tank? 2 inches, 4 inches? I would say I started out at about 10 inches and I try to maintain between 6 and 8, depending on my, how busy life gets. But I do chop and drop and I'm constantly adding leaf litter because you need that leaf litter to also feed the isopods. So am I supplementing heavy and gut loading the isopods? Absolutely. But I'm also going out of my way to feed them maple and oh fuck, magnolia leaves. So maple leaves and magnolia leaves, and the magnolia leaves are a little bit stronger, so you kind of have to wait until they dry out, and then you want to hear that crunch. And when you're breaking all of that down, that's how you're going to continue to keep that level a little bit higher. If you're not chopping and dropping and feeding and kind of replicating fall every few weeks or so, then that soil system is going to drop down pretty heavily because it's constantly also feeding your bearded dragon. Does that make sense? Like you have to keep up with the chop and drop on such a higher level than with a plant because this is an animal.
Yeah, it makes sense. Next question, Rick Easley.
So this would depend on the size of it. So for the size that Kevin has, I mean, you could just kind of use a basic fish tank for maybe 6 months. I have the biggest fish tank that I've seen for free, and it goes maybe 3/4 of the wall here. So it's maybe, I don't know, 6 feet long, 5 feet long, something like that. And he seems extremely happy in that. So if you're able to find something that big, I did learn that if I was buying a tank that large retail, it would be over $1,000. So
Woo-wee.
I think it's Facebook Marketplace and a few of these Buy Nothing, and then it would be your town. So I live in Parker, Colorado. So Buy Nothing Parker, I believe, is where my wife found that. So don't go out there and spend a ton of money on this kind of stuff. Just find an old fish tank or a reptile tank, and then just kind of, usually all you got to do is wash it and maybe repaint a little bit, and it looks brand new.
There you go. That sounds a lot like kind of growing, man. Like it's like I talk about form and function of organics. There's lots of forms of organic growing that we see online that we all do, but the function is basically the same. So in this little world that we're talking about with bearded dragons and even some reptiles, it's like what we're stepping into once again is a new area of, well, let's try and see. There's nothing wrong that you're doing. It's like, let's try it. See what's you got. It's like, what's available to you? What's in your environment? What can you afford? Right? I mean, that it all the money, everything plays into your form and the environment that you're going to participate in. Excuse me. So growing these little reptiles and having fun with them, just like cannabis, do it in a way that you enjoy. That's one of the first things that Bryan said at the very beginning is I asked him, why do people do reptiles? Why are we growing reptiles? What's the point of this? They're scary to me. Mm-hmm. But like you said, they bring joy to people. It's fun to take care of a living thing. That's a simple fact. It's a good, healthy mindset when you're able to look at something and care for it and give it what it needs to be successful. If you can look at people in your life like that also, you're going to be a fantastic human being. If you can look at people and say, I'm going to try to give you what you need to be the best you possibly can be, and I'm going to support you, and you're going to be freaking awesome when I'm done with you. Dude, you're a leader if you can do those things. You're an influencer. People follow guys like that. So I encourage you all that are listening, treat other people like you would your plants. Treat other people like you would your animals, and treat your animals right. Treat your plants right, because it's a fun thing to do. It got me out of depression. Many of y'all know my story. I've said it many times. Gardening got me out of depression. Taking care of something got me out of anxiety and depression and all the yucky place I was at. It's crazy. Like, well, you might be like, well, wasn't taking care of your kids something that helped? Well, no, it just wasn't. But gardening, it actually did. It got me into a better mental state. I think it's just slower. Kids are too dang fast and hectic, but plants are slow. They take their time. They give you a little bit of room to breathe, to look at them, to sit back and enjoy what you've done. There's no mouthing off. There's no throwing fits. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's that environment that brings peace. So I've said it before. I've said it before, and I've said it many times that If you will learn to break unhealthy mental loops by closing healthy organic loops, you will have a fantastic life. In my mind, you will anyway. If you're like me, breaking mental loops uh, will happen by taking care of other things. Gardening is one, and I hope this little bearded dragon is going to be something like that special also. And I think it will be, because that's what you said, and I loved it. It brings people joy. Exactly. That's why we do anything, man. If you're going to do it, let it bring you joy and have fun with it. So, um, you got a favorite question? Because you're gonna have to let us know before we end. We're about done,
Yeah.
y'all.
Well, I thought I liked Rick Easley, to be honest. I know you had another question, but the first one, when I've never truly had people kind of understand pheno hunting from an isopod, so I it stuck out to me that he put that together. That's actually what I put together when even my wife was looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about here? I thought, wow, there's something to isopods. It seems like not everybody understands it. And like we had mentioned from the Cubara standpoint, those are extremely hard to get to breed, or at least most of them are extremely hard to get to breed. So there's skill set there. There is pheno hunting with that. If I can get the sharper colors and the straighter lines, then people want to buy my isopods compared to the ones that aren't. And it's the consumer is becoming a better educated consumer and are actually starting to see those things the same way now. Asking like, how was my cannabis cultivated? That used to not be like one of the first questions. Now obviously it is. It's kind of the same thing, and I would imagine where I am sitting, from a bioactive standpoint, there's this boat is big enough for other people to come on and make products and find a little niche for yourself.
Yep. Do I supply? Okay, so Rick Easley, you won. You're gonna win some of my new genetics coming out that you don't get unless I give them to you. Or unless you buy some of my well, if you
Damn.
buy some of my bundles, I always throw them in. I always throw my new stuff in bundles, because you're not buying my genetics. You're buying my organic stuff. Those are just freebies. Do isopods breed faster than the dragon can eat? I was wondering the same question. You said some of them are prolific.
Yeah, and I would say yes to that question, and that's the goal. So,
Okay.
so if I put usually they come in a 25 pack or a 50 pack as a starter kit, right? For a feeder isopod. And that's usually the dairy cows or the orange dairy cows because they are so prolific. The dairy cows can get out of control, and again, that's why I think the orange dairy cows are the perfect hybrid. But for the last 2 years, the standard has been the dairy cow, and it does become so prolific that you will move around things and see them. But that's kind of the point, is that once you get them to breed up enough and there's a healthy colony, you don't have to buy them from me again. And that's kind of the crutch with crickets and dubia roaches, is that you have to go back to the source each and every time. And so what I do is I try to educate the consumer. Hey, you use these dairy cows, feed your bearded dragon, see how isopods improve on that, and then I know you're going to come back to me for your other your little geckos, your snakes, and all of those things. So sometimes it's what in business I learned is called a lost lead. Sometimes I lose a little bit of money on those beginner kits to make sure that those people come back to me once they find success feeding their animal.
Exactly. That's right. That's the way you do it. That's the way a good businessman does it. He's like, this is what you need. We're gonna get you in cheap, but then you are gonna need other things, and you're gonna get it from me. So a good business guy works. You got the business they want. Well, good. I think we're gonna need to close it down. Rick Easley, you need to email me, please, or go to Instagram, DM me, whatever you want to do. okcalix@gmail.com. Real easy. okcalix@gmail.com. You can email me there if you want, Rick. Um, Bryan, give us your information that you want to tell us to go look at, and then I'll give mine, and we'll close it up.
Yeah. Again, shout out to Mark. This was this is basically partly Mark's brainchild. He kind of like brought it up. What was it, a year ago? I
Yeah.
started working with him on it. You came on like, I don't know, 2 months into it or whatever, and you've been with us ever since. And so
Yep.
I just wanted to highlight that, man. We've been at this for a minute, and now we're offering a lot of this information where you guys can go back and see it. And I'm really happy for that. And that's all Mark. Mark sets all this shit up. We just push the button.
Thank you, Mark.
With that, yeah, and with that said, I've been fortunate enough again to really put my head down, man, and my wife and I created the Rubber Ducky Isopod brand, and then because of that, we also now have international partners, and we're selling terrariums and vivariums with Terrarium Tribe. They've been featured in some fancy magazines, even been featured on Martha Stewart. And so they're upper echelon business people. They've been teaching me a lot. Their names are Dan and Ray. Wanted to give them a quick shout out. Both of those websites are obviously starting to become something. And I think just being in the nitty gritty, teaching you guys, learning from Kevin, learning from Mark, is allowing me to just be a little bit better each and every week compared to my competition. And I view my business the same way I do building soil systems. I just want to get better every week, every month, every year. So appreciate you guys supporting us each and every Friday.
Very good. You guys, I put a couple new strains up today. I've put in a couple new prices on some things on okcalyxshop.com. Go check it out. Also, October 19th, Growcast, Jordan from Growcast and myself are doing the Autumn Natural Farming Immersive. October 19th, there'll be limited space. You'll be going to my land out in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. We'll be staying at what's called the Lighthouse. It's actually a B&B we have out there. Real nice place, guys. The view is beautiful. There'll be deer out there. There's a pond out on the area. But we're going to go out into the woods. We're going to gather material. I'll show you what I would be picking up, why, where I find it, what's good to get, to make IMO3s like I do. And we'll be at the house. I'll be teaching you basically how to the bubble chart of rice, basically. Like if you have some rice, you have avenues that you can use just rice to really break off and branch off into other things. Like when you cook rice, if you'll rinse it off first, like put it in a big pot and rinse the water and stir it around and get the water all starchy, drain that water off. That water's later going to become labs for you. The rice is then going to be cooked and become IMO1 for you. And that IMO1 is going to become 2 and 3 for you. And the labs is going to become EM1 for you, right? And then it's also going to be in the sprays that you'll make. So just the simple use of rice. There's more things you can do with it too. There's more things you can do with the rice wash. A certain amount of days you wait, you'll have certain bacteria that are growing. There's going to be fun information I'm going to give you, and I'm just going to go off like that for about 9 hours straight. We're going to have food there provided by my wife. We'll be cooking. We'll have music. Well, I'm a musician myself. We'll be having all kinds of fun, teaching you all the trade tricks that I know. And, I took Jadam and KNF, combined them into one kind of a thing that I do on my own. There's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It all comes together because it's what my environment directs me to do. I can't create new things. I have to use what's in my environment. And after about, 5 or 6 years, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, about 6 years now, I've been trying this organic thing because cannabis became legal 6 years ago in Oklahoma. That's why. So about that long, I've been trying to really just break down what is it that I really need and nothing else. It's called the essence of a thing. I need everything it needs and nothing else. All those other things are fancy bells and whistles. They cost money and stuff like that. I'm trying to teach you how to farm as though you have no money and you must survive on your own. That's the mentality I have. Now, I'm not taking it there like crazy, but I'm like, okay, I don't need to buy that. Just like you were saying, Brian, with the tank. It's like, man, that tank is sitting over there. I could go buy $1,000 tank, or I can make that thing work right there. I always ask the people around me whenever we have a problem, like at a grow or at my gym where I teach, or heck, even my family. My wife and I will say it to each other sometimes. When you get a situation that's kind of tough, are you good enough to make it work? That's all I need to know. Are you good enough to make it work? Because if you're not, I'm going to do it and get it done, because I know I'm good enough to get it done. I'm confident myself. But you as a human being, my oldest son, let's say, are you good enough to get this job done? Because I need you to do it. And I want him to say, yeah, I'm confident, Dad. I'm ready. Let's go. That's what I want to hear. That's the idea of also with Mike, again, just teaching you to have freedom, have confidence when you grow, because once you learn your environment and what your environment gives you and offers you, then you're like, man, this is all I can use. Like it's a limited source that you get. Like I have a lot of things I can use, but I'm still limited, only what my environment gives me. But man, when I use it and I start to really just crank out some great vegetables and cannabis and stuff like that, you're proud of yourself. It's fantastic. And I love it. Go to okcalyxshop.com, October 19th. You're going to have a great time if you go to that class. Well, shout out to Mark again. We miss you. We know you're buying us presents and you're going to send them to us. So we really appreciate that. No, I don't know. I don't even know what he's doing. He just said he couldn't be here. I wish I could put my little bearded dragon on me, but I'm afraid he's going to fall straight off and land on the hard floor. But yours is chill.
It's the same thing, man. Like I wouldn't put my son anywhere, right? Because he's too fragile. This is basically my 2-year-old daughter right here. We bonded. He knows I'm not gonna drop him. He knows I'm not gonna hurt him, and so that's why he's chill right here. I assure you that if he hadn't bonded with me, he'd be trying to jump, leap. He would not have sat here. So there's something to that, and I know that you're gonna take care of him, man. You take care of kids.
Yeah.
It's from a parent standpoint, man, taking care of Bearded Dragon with the skill sets you have and building up a bioactive system, it's comically easy. And so when you can talk to the soccer moms and the lacrosse moms and the hockey moms that usually have spent the $1,000 for the tank and all that, and you tell them, hey, for basically $100, I can get you everything you need, and you never have to smell the defecation, for one, and then two, it's going to actually be consumed into that system itself. You can see their little minds just fucking. Dads too, but the dads usually, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's usually the wife that makes the final call on that.
It's because
I told you I learned that
kid ain't gonna shout at dad. That kid's gonna go, Mama.
It's kind of funny, man. Yeah. But shout out to everybody that wants to take care of their animals. I mean, that's what we're really trying to figure out here is better ways to improve their environment. And if you go to your local pet store, I promise you, if their bearded dragons are just in plastic tank with a paper towel or whatever, there's opportunity there for you to potentially educate them politely, obviously, because just like in cannabis, the OGs in the reptile world, they are set in their ways, and they still believe that if there's any kind of dirt or specific dirt with a bearded dragon, that the animal would choke. And I promise you, from my experience, that seems to be comical because this dude's pretty intelligent. I mean, he even had a piece of strawberry that was a little too big. So what did he do? He chomped on it a little bit and then let it drop on the soil and then picked at it, just like he kind of does with the chia seeds and stuff. So I think there's a lot more to this animal than some people give it. And I would imagine it's the same with a variety of just different reptiles. It's just I'm afraid of most of them besides this guy.
No
I would
doubt.
not have a snake on my neck or something like that, you know? Hell.
Not in the house, man, either.
I want to share this last little bit with snakes. When I see them at the expos, you know what I see the people that own these snakes constantly going, oh shit, because they're constantly being bit by their own snakes.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
I'd have nightmares if I got bit by a snake. Like I could
bit and then trying to, yeah. So think about that too, man.
All right, y'all. Well, we appreciate all y'all watching. We had a fantastic time, Bryan. Thank you for answering all my questions, answering everybody else's questions. You did a great job enlightening us. You're very smart. Go check out rubberduckyicepods.com. Go check out okcockshop.com. Go check out mibinofficials.com. We will see you next week, I believe, at the same time, at the same place, and we'll have a good time. We appreciate y'all watching. Have a good weekend.
Enjoy that long weekend.